Hello students, welcome back to Experiment Club, Journeys class with Mrs. Schron here. And we are in, I think it's week 8 of our classes. And today we are going to be talking about sound, okay? And we are going to be doing 2 activities to illustrate how we hear sound. And then we will be discussing some of the basic science behind sound. And I hope that you have fun with this. So for the first lab, the things that you're going to need, and these were listed in the email that I sent out, the things that you're going to need are a tissue box with a hole on the top. If you don't have a tissue box, I would guess that some of your parents have been getting shipments from Amazon. So maybe you have a cardboard box laying around. Go ahead and use that. Just find a box that you can very carefully, with the help of a parent or permission of a parent, cut a hole in the top and then make sure the rest of the box is solid, okay? So I have a Kleenex box. I removed the Kleenex and I cut the plastic part that kind of keeps the Kleenex down in there. I cut that out with a pair of scissors, okay? And then the next thing you're going to need is a rubber band. And then the last thing that you'll need to do the initial experiment are some pencils. Now, I didn't have regular pencils, so these are mechanical pencils, but they should still work. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take your box, you're going to stretch your rubber band over the hole, okay? And then you are going to insert your pencils on each side of the hole, okay? Now, we've got the experiment set up. You should also, in your email, have gotten a lab sheet, okay? And so this is for both experiments. And so you can see it says activity 1 is tissue box. And the experiment question is, how do we make sound, okay? And so the materials you need are the tissue box, a rubber band, and then pencils. And then we'll talk about extensions on this in a couple minutes. And then what you're going to do is stretch the rubber band over the tissue box, overlapping the hole, put the pencils under the rubber band on each side of the hole. And then we're gonna see how we create sound. So your next piece on your lab sheet is your hypothesis. That's the educated guess. So you are going to write out what you think is going to happen. I'll give you a minute. Just kidding, that's just boring in videos, right? You can always pause me. So go ahead and write in your hypothesis, or if you're not doing written work right now, you can always just think about it for a minute or tell a parent or sibling. And then we're gonna perform our test, okay? So we're gonna pluck the rubber band and see what happens. What's happening? It's making sound, isn't it, okay? Now we're gonna pluck the rubber band and then touch it to see what happens then. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set mine down. I'm gonna pluck it and touch it and see if you can hear what happens. So as I'm plucking it, once I touch it, you should be hearing that the sound stops. Now, you also probably heard a change in the pitch, or the sound was going from low to high, and that's something we'll talk about in a minute too. Then we're gonna, the last test that you're gonna perform for this part of the experiment is you're gonna pluck it gently and then you're gonna pluck it hard, okay? So, oh, that was maybe a little too hard. My pencil fell out. So, oh, then my other pencil fell out. So go ahead and kind of play with it a little bit, all right? And see if you can figure out what's happening here, all right? So then you're gonna write in your results and your conclusion. And some extensions for this activity would be to use different sizes of rubber bands. So if you have different widths of rubber band, mine is really kind of narrow. I have some that are thicker, but they wouldn't fit over my tissue box. So, and again, because we're kind of stuck right now in the houses and not supposed to be going out running extra errands, I was not able to procure some extra rubber bands of different widths at this moment in time. But if you have some, you can go ahead and use those, or if you plan on doing all of these activities maybe later in the summer or whatnot, you can maybe ask for your parents to order some from your HSTs from Inspire so that you can do some different extensions with this. So you change the width of the rubber band. Another thing that you could do is move the pencils further apart and closer together and see how that affects the sound. So I think let's do that together right now and see if we can hear. Okay, so now they're further apart. Okay, so that's a little bit deeper sound. Now I'm going to move them a little bit closer together. What kind of sound do you hear? It's a little bit higher pitched, and I'm going to move them kind of in the middle of the cardboard on the top of the box and see what we hear then. Kind of in the middle, huh? So that's on the very ends of the box. So pushed all the way out. Hear that again. And then in the center. And then on the edges of the hole. Okay, so you should be hearing a different sound. Now, some of you, if you play instruments like guitar or violin or something, you might already be familiar with some of these concepts because you know that something is happening with this rubber band, okay? And we will discuss that at the end of this video. But go ahead and make your conclusions, all right? And write those in. And then you can pause your video if you need to, but I'm gonna move on to the second activity, okay? And so on your lab sheet, it's just right below the first one, it's just right down here. It says activity number 2, bowl. All right, so this one we're gonna be using a bowl. And so the materials that you're gonna need for this activity are, again, they were in your email, a bowl. Okay, so I just have a little bowl. And then plastic wrap, and I already stretched mine, and I didn't want to unstretch it because it did a really good job, so I don't want to mess with it. And then you need another rubber band, or you can use the same one that you were using on your tissue box, okay? So bowl, plastic wrap, rubber band, and then you're going to need, if you have them, sprinkles. Who likes sprinkles? You like sprinkles on your ice cream or on your cupcakes or cakes or cookies, whatever. And I actually have 2, okay? So I have these really tiny, small ball ones, and then I have these more traditional sprinkles that we use, you know, you might see it like cherry on top or something. And what you're gonna do, so those are your materials, and then your procedure, you're gonna gather your supplies. You're going to stretch the plastic wrap across the top of the bowl and secure it with the rubber band, okay? And it needs to be very tight. Oh, did you hear that? So what I did is once I stretched my rubber band, I kind of pulled the plastic wrap around to make it really tight. Okay, so something's even happening there. All right? And then our question, sorry to back up to the first thing on the list. Our question is, can we see vibrations? Can we see what's happening with vibrations? So now you're going to need to fill in your hypothesis, okay? So what do you think is going to happen when we what we're going to do is we're going to put the sprinkles, we'll do a test with each of them. We're going to put the sprinkles on top of the plastic wrap, and then we're going to get our faces really close down, and we're gonna hum, okay? And so let's start out with the larger sprinkles, okay? And I'm gonna get my face real down close to the bowl and I'm gonna hum, and let's see if we can see what happens. Now I'm not breathing out with my nose, or I'm trying not to. I'm just humming, okay? Can you see and hear what's happening? So with the vibration of the sound that's coming from my vocal cords, it's the sound is going through the air, which we'll talk about in a minute, and it's creating a vibration on the plastic wrap that is then moving our sprinkles. Now, if you don't have sprinkles at home, don't worry. You can use salt, okay, or like coarse grained pepper. Or you can try using like sugar, okay, granules of sugar. You just need something that's granular and that you can see. All right, so now I'm gonna pour some of these Now these ones are a little bit messy. There's one that just fell on my computer. I don't want to get it in my keyboard. All right, so let's look at what these ones do. Now with these ones, I had to get much closer, didn't I? And so one of the other things that we're going to try is we're going to try making a high-pitched noise, and then we're going to try making a low-pitched noise. All right, so what did we see there? Those ones were like bouncing and stuff because obviously they carry a lot less mass than these larger sprinkles. We can compare maybe the size of them. Look at this. You see the size there? How much smaller those little tiny ones are? I think I like the tiny sprinkles better than the big sprinkles, but that's just me. All right, but you could see that some of them were even bouncing, and then we could see that when we did the high-pitched noise, they bounced further, and when I did the low-pitched noise, they bounced a lot more, and when I did a high-pitched noise, they barely moved at all. There was only, I think, one little guy that I saw vibrating a little bit, okay? So, why are we talking about this? Can you guess anything? Well, let's talk about extensions with this one first. You can try different granular sized objects. So we did 2 different sizes of sprinkles. You can do sugar, you can do salt, you can try a bunch of different things and see if you can observe any differences in the way that they respond to the sound. Again, hum at different pitches. And then another thing you could do if you wanted to is, I have this one sized bowl, but what if I have other bowls? So maybe try a really large bowl, or try a really small bowl and see if we can observe any differences based on the size of the bowl. Another thing you could try maybe too is even like 2 layers of plastic wrap to see if that affects the outcome of the experiment. And then you could also try using different size of rubber bands to see if that affects the ability of the sprinkles to move with the vibration of our voice. All right, so go ahead and clean all that up, and then I'll pause the video and we'll talk about what's going on here, okay? All right, so just to recap, we just did 2 activities. The first one with the tissue box was to see if we can make sound, and then the second one was with the bowl, and that was to see if we can observe vibrations happening, okay? And so obviously those 2 things, sound and vibration, work together. And so from what you just saw, hopefully this explanation of what sound is and how it's created will make sense to you now after you did some hands-on stuff, okay? So sound is the production of vibrations on 3 different sources, okay? So the first is the source object. So the vibration has to occur or start somewhere. For us, when we speak, it's in our vocal cords, right? So the vibration starts on our vocal cords and then sound comes out. After it hits our vocal cords, what happens is, hopefully by now you know that even though we don't see anything in front of us, except in the Inland Empire because we see our air here, the air, even though it looks invisible, is filled with what's called molecules, okay? So these are atoms that are bonded together to make molecules. And when the vibration occurs somewhere, for instance, with our first experiment on the rubber band that was over our tissue box, the vibration starts on the rubber band, and then the molecules in the air vibrate against each other, okay? And then the third vibration is what happens in our eardrum, okay? So the rubber band vibrates, the molecules start vibrating, and then they eventually move to make a sound wave, and they hit our eardrum, which then our brain processes as sound, okay? So 3 vibrations: the source object, the air molecules, and your eardrum, okay? So the vibrations, now remember that the vibrations, the air molecules are moving, but what happens is they start in a place, they hit the guy next to them, and they move back, okay? So it's kind of like this. Okay, they stay where they're at. Now, what we hear is called frequency, okay? The frequency is the number of vibrations that happen per second, and that's measured in what's called hertz, and it's abbreviated with a capital H and a lowercase z. 1 hertz is 1 vibration per second, okay? When we hear the lowest vibration that a human ear can hear is 20 hertz per second, or 20 vibrations per second, okay? The fastest we can hear is 20,000 vibrations per second, or hertz per second. Now, you may have heard in the past, or maybe you have a dog and you have a dog whistle. And it's a really curious thing because you blow on the whistle and you can't hear anything, but the dog can. And that's because some animals, because of the way their eardrums are designed or have adapted, they process sound a little bit differently, or they have a different range which they can hear. Dogs can hear higher pitches than humans, but did you know cats can hear even more? And then porpoises have the best ability to hear. They can hear up to 150,000 vibrations per second, okay? So that is like 7.5 times as many vibrations as we can hear and interpret as sound, okay? And so remember that those air molecules, it's not traveling from my voice and then up into my ears. It's like a chain reaction, okay? Like think about the domino effect, right? The dominoes aren't moving, but they're affecting the ones that sit next to them, right? And so the molecules are hitting each other, and then that's a chain reaction that happens until we get to process the sound and the vibration in our eardrums, all right? And so when they're moving faster is when we hear higher pitch sounds like, and when the vibrations or the frequency is lower is when we hear, or slower, we hear low. So think slow and low and slow, and then high is fast. All right, so again, hopefully you had the materials to get this done. These are pretty common things to have around the house. Tissue boxes. Hopefully you are able to find tissue these days. I know some things are hard to find, but you may have some boxes laying around. If you're gonna empty it, don't waste the tissue. I didn't. I took my tissues out and I saved them for later. I'm gonna put them back in the box when I'm done with the video, and then that way my family will have tissues if they need them, and then pencils and rubber bands and things like that, hopefully you had laying around the house. Hopefully you learned something today about sound. I'll post these videos. I have the lab sheets up, and if you need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I miss you guys. Really hoping that we get to be back in the classroom, but as the news continues to progress and the news conferences aren't looking good for now, so it's looking like maybe this is gonna be going into June, but we'll see, and we'll be hopeful that we can be together again and enjoy each other's company and camaraderie as we learn. Until then, I will continue to make these videos and provide options for you guys to keep busy and still continue your education during this time. Thank you.